can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat.
Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted as always to be joined by Elliot Grigg. We're here for the big fight breakdown for the big rematch taking place at Wembley Stadium on July 19th. Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois go at it again a couple of years after their first fight, in which Usyk was the victor by way of stoppage. Elliot, good to be joined by you as always. One of the biggest fights to take place in the UK this year. It's an undisputed heavyweight title fight. Those fights don't happen too often. And we're going to go into it. Interested to get your views about a couple of things. How much has Daniel Dubois improved since that first fight, in your opinion? It was August 2023, so nearly 2 years ago. Since then, was become the first man to defeat Jarrell Miller by stoppage, the first man to defeat Filip Hrgović by stoppage, and beat Anthony Joshua in a fight that he was quite a big underdog in at Wembley Stadium as well. How much has he improved, in your opinion, Elliot?
You know what? It's interesting. I think my question's really, I suppose, not going to be too much about boxing itself. I feel like it's hard to actually quantify how much he's improved in the ring. But I think what I've seen from Daniel Dubois really is a kind of growth in those major events. To be perfectly honest with you, I feel like he's kind of grown into the role of like a kind of world champion. I think by the time he fought Usyk the first time around, obviously, he'd headlined a couple of obviously quite a few of Warren's cards, but like the biggest fight was probably up until that point was probably what Joe Joyce should say. I'd say until that point. So, sort of British European sort of silver sort of level. But then obviously goes into Usyk, who's a very different proposition. You're kind of going, well, they still had the question marks about the Joyce injury, the eye, etc. And then obviously there was that low blow controversy, but he kind of say he quit in that fight necessarily, but he kind of pulled out of that fight as well. So again, you look at those other fights that have come after that have sort of answered more questions really about his kind of mentality for me and his ability to like withstand those sort of big events. I think they're different fight, like Miller, Hrgović, Joshua, very different fighters to Usyk. So it's quite hard. I think you look at the way he approached those fights. I think he showed grit and determination against Miller, for example. It's quite a tough fight. He's a big guy, Miller as well, and he's obviously a guy that likes to go forward. Obviously, he came through that, stopped him. Hrgović, I don't actually rate Hrgović that highly. I'm not going to lie to you, but I think it was a good victory. And Joshua was a weird one because I think, yes, he was underdog, but is that more because of Joshua's kind of legacy at that point? I think at the point they kind of both met, Joshua was kind of going like this, and like obviously the ending was going like this. But it's one of those kind of like who lands first fights in a way. And we go, yeah, he flogged Joshua around, to be fair, he did. But equally, there's a couple of punches where you think if Joshua kind of, an inch or a couple of inches to the left or right, then it could have quite easily been Daniel Dubois laying on his back. So I feel like it's hard to really say the improvements or whether the improvements that he's made are kind of going to be good enough for Usyk. But I do think that he's improved in his kind of capacity to kind of hold himself as a world champion at that level and kind of be used to the sort of everything that comes with it, the event size and all the things of that nature.
Yeah, and I think another question is Dubois at his peak now? Is this the best Dubois we're ever going to get? 27 years old now. Still feels weird saying that 'cause it feels like he's been around a long time, but only 27 years old compared to Usyk, who is 38 now. And I think that's where it interests me. I was really impressed with how he handled the occasion last time out. Wembley Stadium, 98,000 people, the underdog. Dubois has been stopped twice before, going in against Joshua, who was still, the biggest name in British boxing. And he went in there and beat him up. That was really impressive. Um, we know Usyk very well, don't we, Elliot? Because, obviously he's the best heavyweight in the world, one of the best fighters in the world. But also he's fought Brits on several occasions, hasn't he? Tyson Fury twice, Anthony Joshua twice, Derek Chisora, of course, Daniel Dubois, Tony Bellew as well. Faced quite kind of the plethora of British fighters. Some fights closer than others. I think the two Joshua fights were fairly straightforward. I thought for him, didn't lose too many rounds. Fury, a lot closer than Joshua fights. Chisora fight was a close fight. Bellew had his moments before getting stopped in the second half of the fight. Dubois will maybe go into what happened in their first fight a bit later. But my question to you is, does Dubois have the best chance of beating Usyk compared to those British fighters? And it's a tough question because Fury, kind of one of the best kind of heavyweights of his generation. A lot of people thought Joshua was going to beat Usyk, but does Dubois have the best chance out of the lot of them?
That's a hard question. I think in my heart, no. I still think I still can't understand how Fury lost to Usyk twice. It's in a weird thing to say. I feel like, with the sort of size he has and the sort of advantages and the sort of style he has, I was kind of shocked at the way those kind of fights started to go, to be honest with you. So for me, it kind of still sort of bewitches me and confuses me that happened. Joshua, I thought actually equipped himself very well in that second fight. I think yeah, okay, it seemed fairly straightforward, but he boxed really well, I think, under Robert Garcia in that second fight, much better than he did in the first fight. But I think for Joshua, you're looking at going. It's an interesting one. Like tactically, what do you do if you're into Joshua? Like you've obviously got power, but you can't necessarily come forward and stick it on Usyk in that way. But like, did he get the tactics right? Was he a bit too negative? All that sort of things kind of come into play. I think the fact that Daniel Dubois has got a different kind of power to me than Joshua in a way. He's almost got that kind of not that wilder power, but he's almost got more of that one punch power that we've seen rather than Joshua that I think actually has got a great chance. Um, Maybe the best chance from that perspective, but I still feel like with all the attributes that Fury had, he probably had the best all-round package to trouble Usyk in a sort of technical fight. Bellew, I think Bellew was sort of finished with his career really at that stage. Was kind of called out, and I feel like even in his prime, there was golfing class at cruiser, and even if up at heavyweight as well. Bellew's not really a natural heavyweight, so yeah, I think Chisora. I mean, Chisora, like, if all jokes aside, a sort of prime Chisora that keeps coming forward, that presents a different kind of problem in some ways. Like it's obviously very tough, quite hard to stop. So he can do his own challenges, but I do think Daniel Dubois maybe second on that list, maybe in with Joshua, depending on what the sort of tactics that Joshua chooses for the fight against Usyk. But I think out of all those that you named, the closest one that I think that came to beating him, or the best performance actually, I think was probably Joshua's second performance out of all those guys. I think Fury had moments, but was quite complacent as well. It wasn't necessarily as clear cut as he obviously thought it was in his head. But I think out of all of them, Joshua in the second fight for me came the closest, and probably out of all the Brits that Usyk's faced so far.
Yeah, I think like you brought up the Chisora fight then. I think it's surprising that other British heavyweights or other kind of heavyweights in general haven't deployed the same sort of kind of rough and tough tactics with Usyk because I felt like you could see at times during that fight Usyk wasn't comfortable. He was kind of looking at the ref. The ref wasn't helping him because Chisora wasn't really doing anything illegal. And it's just surprising when you see the heavyweights, the top heavyweights, the better heavyweights that than Chisora have kind of come and gone, and people kind of insist on trying to kind of outbox Usyk rather than just kind of try and be a bit dirty with him, try and kind of hold on to him when he kind of gets some rhythm going. Yeah, but they've all had the same result in a loss to Usyk. Um, what is what's left of Usyk's career, Elliot? Um, because 38 years old now, there've been some rumors saying that he's got two fights left, obviously Dubois in July and then one more. What do you think? Because some heavyweights go on until they're 40, 41. I think Vladimir Klitschko went on until he was 41. Wilder is nearly 40. He's older than Usyk, so he's not in kind of strange territory here. But yeah, what do you think's left? What's your kind of your gut feeling of how many fights he's got left?
It's a really interesting question because I feel like the answer to how many fights will he have and how many fights do I think he should have is different. To be honest, I don't think he's got anything to prove. I really don't. I feel like even this, if he comes, he doesn't even need this fight to be honest to prove anything to me. Or shouldn't need it to really prove anything to anyone else, I suppose. But it'll obviously be that kind of low blow chat that people talk about in the first fight. But I think if he gets it done conclusively here, there's no one really out there that I think screaming, I deserve a shot on the title. Like if I look at some of those other names, you've got like, yeah, Joe Parker's had a good run. Of course he has. But do I think Usyk's legacy will be affected or he would be seen as any way avoiding Joe Parker? Absolutely not. I mean, I think for me, the only fights that I think would interest me in kind of watching Usyk would be kind of either these kind of like, like catch weight kind of like showpiece event fights. Like if you put him up with like, I don't know, someone like Paterno or like, something ridiculous like that. And they had him, or you had like, it's a shame someone like Wilder, to be honest with you, isn't the Wilder that we saw previously because you go, what happens if like someone like Usyk could fight someone like Wilder, like where he just gets touched once and he goes. That for me is like a good spectacle. Or maybe someone if like Bacody hadn't disgraced himself against Parker as well, you could go put him in with a monster like Bacody and just see what happens. Those are sort of like kind of like entertainment fights really for Usyk. But I think as when it comes to like legacy and heavyweight division, after this, there's no one really. There's no one that I can sit here and go, yeah, I think he has to like beat this person before he sails off into sunset. I think he can do what he wants, but I do think he actually probably will fight on. Do believe that. I think probably two fights after this, or we'll be surprised if at least two after this. Um, but it would sadden me to see him sort of keep going on and lose to someone who wasn't sort of in his class either. So I hope he kind of maybe just calls it a day. Even though I want to say, I love watching him fight. I don't think he needs to continue to do so.
Yeah, look, it would have been, I think, after the Fury rematch, it would have been a good time to retire because look, he's made an insane amount of money in his career, like the two Joshua fights, the two Fury fights, WSB to WSB fights as well when he won that tournament as well. There's no need to fight for money. So yeah, it would have been quite nice to have gone out. That would have been quite a way to go out. As you said, I don't think there are contenders, but there aren't obvious contenders. I think Ajit Kabayel's another name who seems like a dangerous person in the division. I do agree with what you said. If Bakoli hadn't had such an awful few months, if he had maybe kind of fought Ajagba as planned in May and not fought Parker and stopped Ajagba early, me and you he would probably be here now saying, I want to see Usyk fight Bakoli next if he beats Dubois. I think that would be the name on everyone's lips, but that hasn't happened. You know, Bakoli, we saw what happened against Joseph Parker. We then saw what happened against Efe Ajagba. He kind of needs a win really to be honest. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I feel like with Usyk, he's got a proper challenge here in Daniel Dubois, so he has to get through him first. Before we get on to predictions, Elliot, I do want to get your opinion on what happened a couple of years ago. Usyk won pretty much every round, stopped Daniel Dubois towards the end of the fight. However, there was a knockdown which was deemed a low blow, and people are still debating it now, which is crazy 2 years later. Was it a low blow? Did Usyk just kind of fancy a break? Should the referee started counting? Give us your opinion on what we saw, please.
Tough one as well, man, because I can kind of see both sides. But when I saw it in real time, I thought it was a legal blow. And like to be honest with you, I've seen so many pictures from various sort of angles. I still, to be honest, think it's quite inconclusive. For to my mind, I feel like I suppose what I would say is, like the way that the belt line is, essentially defined not necessarily by where his sort of belt line is on the trunks, is it? It's like the actual belt line is different to that. So if you look at it and go, it's kind of like below the navel, or whatever, and it hits him on the kind of guard. Yes, it's technically a legal blow. It's technically a low blow. But when I don't know if it's an intentional low blow. To be honest with you, I think I've just caught him kind of coming up a bit as well, and so it looked kind of low. But in real time, I thought it was fine. But to be honest with you, to be honest, we've seen lower given as legal blows. And if Usyk doesn't go over, I don't think the ref's stopping that for a low blow and ducting a point or anything. I think he's just going to carry on with the action. So I can kind of see it both ways. I kind of, in a weird way, it feels like still though it feels like to me like the right man won. Like you say, he dominated the fight in a way, like the right man got the result, but at the same time, I can kind of see why if he done it to boy, he'd be a little bit aggrieved, especially if even as he. But then whether he's claimed, we've been working on that for months, whatever. That's our sort of shot that we wanted, yada yada yada. Whether that's kind of marketing talk or to get it back into this rematch, who knows? I kind of see why they're a bit aggrieved. You've got all the belts coming home, and then it's like, actually, we'll give 5 minutes wait in the gap and get stopped in the way you'll stop. So I can kind of see both sides of it. I thought it was legal, but also I'm not going to complain if people think it's illegal. It's really that much of a what's your opinion for me? Like genuinely, what's your opinion? Both can seem to be valid. So in that way, yeah, I suppose that's why we've got this rematch, and that's why I'm looking forward to hopefully there being a bit more conclusive either way this time.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny how 2 years later, it's the question people are asking. A lot of people still don't know, and it's fair enough. It depends what angle you look from it. I think that one thing that I'm fairly certain of is Usyk does not get hit in the private area. I think he gets hit in a position that's maybe still painful, but he doesn't get hit in the private area, which obviously would hurt. And he's made the decision to kind of go down knowing that the referee isn't going to cast it as a knockdown and going to class it as a low blow. Do I think he was hurt enough to the point where if the referee started counting, he wouldn't have been able to get back up? No. And that's quite key. That's just my opinion, but I think that's quite key. It's not like Usyk was kind of flat out on the ground, unable to move, or just kind of clutching his liver or something like that. So yeah, but we'll see. Look, it's time to put it to bed in the rematch. All right, there's not much left to do now, is there? We're going to do predictions. Usyk, the favorite here, the favorite to get the win over Dubois again, but Dubois again, look, arguably in his peak now, and you can't deny the run he's been on. Elliot, what's your prediction for this one, please?
Oh, it's delicious. It's delicious. It really is. I think I'm going to go Usyk again. I think Usyk wins this, frankly. I'm just struggling between whether I think he goes points or whether I think he stops him. To be honest with you, I feel like the thing that's staying in my mind is obviously the Usyk nearly got Fury out of there. Probably should have had that fight stopped on KO, frankly, if it wasn't such a fight of that magnitude, or at least had a it could have easily gone that way. He had Joshua hurt as well. And I think with Daniel Dubois, with his history of injuries and the age and the money behind him, I actually can potentially see the fight being stopped again. I think it won't be early though. It'll still be around that kind of 9 to 12 mark, 8 to 12 mark. But I can genuinely see Usyk stopping him around that point. And to be honest with you, like I know it's supposed to be partial, but I actually quite like to see it. I quite not because I've got anything against Daniel Dubois, but I just quite like to have Usyk have that legacy sort of sewn up and just off he goes. To be honest with you, and that would be the sort of perfect way to end it for me. So yeah, I'm going Usyk KO somewhere 8 to 12.
Yeah, for sure, fantastic. And I think yeah, that could definitely happen. And kind of going back to what Usyk might do next, there's a I wonder if there's a possibility he'll have one more fight, and that fight to be against just an easier touch as kind of like a goodbye a goodbye fight. He could be obviously could fight back in Poland, which is where the first Dubois fight was, just as kind of a way of kind of performing in front of some Ukrainian fans as well, which is obviously difficult to do at the moment. Um, my prediction's similar to yours, Elliot. I watched, I don't remember what the outlet was, so apologies, but I watched an interview with Shane McGuigan recently, who obviously used to train Daniel Dubois for a short period, and he said, "How is Dubois going to keep up with the pace that Usyk sets?" And I also think about the time when Tony Bellew fought Oleksandr Usyk, and he said fighting Oleksandr Usyk is exhausting. Basically, he makes you tired mentally. And I don't think Dubois is going to be able to keep up with that. I'll give Dubois a chance in this fight because I think this is an improved version of Dubois and Usyk could be on the slide. But I'm actually going for Usyk to stop Daniel Dubois in round 9, which is the exact same round that happened 2 years ago. That's just
Can I ask you an additional question
Mm.
before we leave? An additional question for me. I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm interested in people's opinions. So if you'd like to leave those in the comments as well, is how do you approach this fight if you're Daniel Dubois though? Like with the sort of power that you have, do you try and kind of use your jab? Do you kind of try and keep it down the stretch, or do you just try and bomb him out there at some point? Because like you say, it is exhausting. He moves, he makes you faint, he makes you work. You're going to get tired eventually. How do you approach it? We've seen different approaches
Yeah,
possibly.
good question. The way that he started against Joshua, I think Joshua was stunned because I think usually a lot of the time when it's two big heavyweights, the first round, nothing really happens. They're both a bit tentative because both guys can really punch. And Joshua wasn't expecting Dubois to start as quickly as he did. And Joshua got knocked down in the first round and got stopped in the fifth round. I think if I'm Dubois, is that your best chance? Probably. Because I think if it gets to say round 4 and Dubois not really landed a glove on Usyk, Usyk's going to, once it gets into a rhythm and gets used to you, that's kind of it, really. That will be it. I just think there's a chance Dubois won't get in. So I think if Dubois is going to win this fight, I think it's in the first 3 or 4 rounds. How about you?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it because I actually haven't really just I haven't really don't really know because on one hand I feel like if you come out and you go start strong like you did against Joshua and you kind of can't get him out of there, then you're almost fucked as well because you know what his conditioning's like. So, you know, at some point he's going to switch it on, and if you drop a level slightly, that's obviously going to let him in. But I also feel like you're not going to outbox him. So for me, if you're Dubois, you're sort of going and you're using the sort of jab, whatever. Are you hoping against to land the kind of the Hail Mary shot you landed in the first fight, basically? You're hoping somehow that like he has a lapse in concentration or he moves a certain way and you catch him with everything you've got and he goes, which is a gamble in itself, not really a tactic either. So I don't know whether. So for me, I think I would try and start fast. First 3 rounds. If you haven't kind of got him out in the first 3 rounds, I think you're gonna have to sort of pace yourself for a long night. But I do maybe switch to that kind of middle of just like, kind of just waiting for the one shot type thing. But like you say, you cannot let him get sort of 4 rounds up, start getting to rhythm, start finding the distance, start finding the movement, start kind of tagging you with that left jab, coming in with that high guard and kind of, and I just think he's gonna it's such an enigma. But I think, yeah, I do think maybe the first sort of 3 rounds. But I just again like going for the body as well. You've got to try and just get him. I mean, we saw Fury try and hit the body as well, didn't we? As well, target the body, which is quite
Mm.
surprising. Just slow him down a bit.
Mm.
Just so I think if you're Dubois, do the same thing really. Because I don't think Usyk. One thing I will say is Usyk's not got that one punch KO that like Joshua has. So it's going to be an accumulation of punches that I think will stop Dubois in this fight. So you can kind of afford to take a couple possibly to like get your own off. But yeah, it's fascinating. Try and start strong, but Usyk KO, I think. This
Yeah.
is where I'm going.
Looking forward to look, we're in agreement, but Daniel Dubois is a live opponent in this fight, and he is more of a live opponent in this fight than he was a couple of years ago. And look, if Dubois pulls this off, then what a position he's in. He's in, a pound for pound list. He could have a massive trilogy with Usyk. He could have a big rematch against Joshua. Maybe Fury will come back and fight Dubois. Like, what position Dubois will be in if he pulls this off? We'll see. We'll see. We'll be looking forward to it. Elliot, thank you very much for your time as always, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much, guys. And as always, thank you very much for watching.